Hey gang, it's Coach Adam. Just wanted to talk through some volleyball positions for some folks that haven't seen it at this level. You might have to watch this video a couple of times, and that's okay. Work with us during practice and then come back, do some homework, come back to practice, and we'll all get on the same page. This is tough to learn if you've never seen it before. Most people, when they learn about volleyball, think it looks like this. There's 6 players on each side. There's a net in the middle. All the players are basically the same. And somebody serves the ball over the net. They hit it back to the other team. They hit it back again. They hit it back again. Notice how it's one hit each time. It just tries to go across the net, and eventually the ball hits the ground. That's a lot of fun, but it is casual volleyball. It's not competitive volleyball. Good volleyball teams use 3 hits to send the ball over the net. They use a pass to control the ball. They use a set to set up an offense. And then they attack the ball across the net or spike the ball across the net. A tip block does not count as one of the team's 3 hits. Each volleyball player is different, and this is good. Some players are awesome passers. Some have great hands that are good for setting. Some are super strong servers. Some are outstanding blockers. Some are super fast defenders. Some are great attackers and they hit a really heavy ball. Some are super fast, and some on the court are leaders. But most players have a combination of good skills that can benefit the team. A great team works together to get the most out of everyone's strengths so that the team can do well. Some skills are better suited to help the team if they are in certain places on the court, such as the front row. You need to be good at attacking, blocking, and passing. The back row, serving, passing, defense. All players have to be good at communication and speed. These are the positions in volleyball. Each position must know where to be during all phases of the play. All 3 phases: base defense, base offense, and transition. Let's look at each of these positions in detail and see how they relate to each other. Typically, there's 2 outside hitters on the court. There's one in the front row and one in the back row. This is looking at the outside hitter when they are in the front row. The outside hitter's primary responsibility when they are in the front row is passing the ball to the setter and then attacking the ball over the net. Once the ball is on its way to the setter, the outside hitter must get into position to attack the volleyball from the left side of the court. Typically, 2 outside hitters are on the court at the same time. We're going to call them OH1 and OH2. One in the front row and one in the back row. Base defense for an outside hitter when they're in the front row is at the net on the left side. They are paying attention to the ball on the other side of the court. They're ready to attack an overpass, they're ready to block, and they're ready to communicate free ball to their teammates. When the ball comes over the net, we transition to base offense. The outside hitter quickly moves to base offense and is ready to pass, and they're listening for the setter to call help if it's a bad pass. Once the ball is on the way to the setter, the outside hitter in the front row should be at the 10-foot line. They should be paying attention to the ball and ready to attack. They should call for the ball so that the setter knows you're ready to attack. Outside, outside. Approach the ball and attack over the net. After the ball goes over the net, transition to your base defense position, which is at the net on the left side, ready to block. Now let's look at the middle blocker. The middle blocker's primary responsibility to the team is defensive net play, or blocking. The middle blocker moves side to side across the net to block the opposing team's attacks. Once the middle blocker determines a block is not needed, they must get into position to attack the ball from the center of the court. Base defense for a middle blocker is in the middle of the court at the net, ready to block. They need to pay attention to the ball on the other side of the court, ready to attack an overpass. And if the set on the other side is to the left or the right, they need to be ready to move to block that attack. They also need to be ready to communicate a free ball if the other team is not going to attack the ball. The mentality for a middle blocker is that they own the net. This is their net. Nothing happens at that net unless they want it to. As the ball comes over to our team, we transition to base offense. The middle blocker moves away from the net quickly and get ready to attack. We're going to count on our teammates to pass the ball, and we're going to give them room to pass. And as the ball moves to the setter, we're going to move into attack position while paying attention to the setter. We're going to call for the ball on the approach to the setter. Go, 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 go! We're going to finish our approach, and we're going to attack the ball. Once the ball goes to the other side, we're going to quickly move to our base defense position, up at the net, in the middle, ready to block. Now let's look at the opposite. The primary responsibility of the opposite is passing the ball to the setter and then getting ready to attack. The opposite plays opposite of the setter in the rotation. If the setter is in the front row, the opposite will be in the back row. If the setter is in the back row, the opposite will be in the front row. Typically, the opposite plays on the right side of the court. Base defense for an opposite is at the net, ready to block on the right side of the court. They're paying attention to the ball on the other side, ready to attack an overpass, ready to block, and ready to communicate free ball. As the ball comes over the net, they transition to their base offense position, which is at the 10-foot line or the 3-meter line, paying attention to the ball. As the ball moves to the setter, they call for the ball. Back, back, back! The setter sets the opposite approaches the ball and attacks it over the net. When the ball goes to the other side of the net, they transition to base defense at the net, ready to block. Now let's look at the other outside hitter, the one in the back row. The outside hitter's primary responsibility when they are in the back row is passing the ball to the setter. Once the ball is on its way to the setter, the outside hitter must get into position to cover the hitter in case the other team blocks the attack. Typically, 2 outside hitters are on the court at the same time, one in the front row and one in the back row. We're looking at the one in the back row. Base defense, when the outside hitter is in the back row, is in the middle of the court towards the back line. They're ready to communicate free ball. They're paying attention to the ball on the other side of the court. They're ready to defend the entire back line if needed. As the ball comes over, we're going to transition to offense. We're going to call the ball as loudly as we can as we prepare to pass. Me, me, me! We're going to pass the ball to the setter. If you can get to the ball, call it and pass it. Move. As the ball goes to the setter, we're going to move to our base offense position and prepare to cover the hitter. As the front row attacks the ball, we're covering the hitter up by the 10-foot line. We're going to play the ball if the hitter is blocked. Then, as the ball goes across the net, we transition to our base defense position, and we get ready to play defense. Now let's look at the libero. The libero is a strictly defensive player and must follow special rules. The libero does not count as a sub and may play for multiple players. That's why they have a different colored jersey. The primary responsibility of the libero is passing and defense. Should the setter pass the first ball, the libero will set the second ball to an attacker if possible. Base defense for the libero is on the left side of the court behind the 10-foot line. They're ready to communicate a free ball. They're ready to defend short in the middle of the court. As the ball comes over the net, we transition to offense. We're going to call the ball loudly. Me, me, me! Get ready to pass. Pass the ball to the setter. As the ball moves to the setter, move to your base offense position and prepare to cover the hitter. Base offense for a libero is behind the 10-foot line, ready to cover a hitter. As the ball is delivered to the hitter, move up a little bit and cover the hitter in case they're blocked. As the ball goes over the net, transition to base defense. Now let's look at the setter. The setter's primary responsibility is to deliver the ball to the attackers and run the offense. Their focus is on defense first, but once the setter determines they will not play the first contact, they must be ready to play the team's second contact and set the ball. If the setter cannot get to the second ball, they call for help. Base defense for the setter is on the right side of the court behind the 10-foot line, watching the ball on the other side of the net, ready to communicate free ball, and they are also ready to defend the path to their base offensive position. The setter goes back and forth between offense and defense, and they defend that path only. If the ball is right to you as a setter, play it. If it's nowhere near you, get to your base offense position quickly. Your teammates are going to pass the ball to you, so get quickly to your base offense position and prepare to set. Call for the ball. I'm here, 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 here. After your team passes the ball, no matter where it is on the court, go get the ball. The second hit is yours unless you call help. Set the ball to an attacker. As the attacker hits the ball over the net, prepare to set again in case the hitter's blocked. Your teammates will pass the ball back to you and you can set again. Once the ball goes over the net, transition to defense. Move to your base defense position and prepare to play defense. So those were the individual positions. Now let's take a look at how they move when they're all on the court at the same time. You may have the ability to train and play multiple positions, but when you're on the court, you will play one position. You must know which position you are playing so you know where to be. Your teammates are counting on you to play your position to help the team. You must talk to each other while you're on the court. Here's what the team looks like when they are all in base defense position. We're watching the ball on the other side and we're reacting. We're ready to communicate a free ball if the other team will not run an attack. We're also ready to defend in case the other team attacks and spikes the ball to us on our side of the court. As the ball comes over, we transition to offense. The back row is expecting to pass the ball, and the front row is getting ready to attack. If the ball is near you, move to the ball, call it, and pass it to the setter. Me, me, me. Defense is more important than offense on the first contact. As we pass the ball to the setter, all players move to their base offense position. We must react to bad passes, pass the ball high. Note how the outside hitter's calling for the ball. Outside, outside. The middle's calling for the ball. Go, go, go. Back is calling for the ball. Back, back, back. The setter has three options in this case. They can set any of those attackers. The setter sets an attacker, and the attacker that gets the ball hits the ball over the net. The teammates, specifically the libero and the outside hitter in the back row, are covering in case that attack is blocked, and the setter is ready to set again if needed. Once the ball goes to the other side of the net, all players quickly move to their base defense position. After the play, celebrate. Come to the middle of the court. Talk to each other. If you need a pass higher, say it. If you need a set higher, say it. Talk to your team. Celebrate the point. Getting to your position. When we start the set or we start the game, this is what a common starting lineup might look like. The down ref's going to come out and check that the players are in the correct order with the lineup sheet before the set begins. Now notice how players are in certain orders. We always want an outside hitter in the front row and we want one in the back row. We always want a middle blocker in the front row and a libero or a middle blocker in the back row. We also want to have a setter, in this case, in the back row and an opposite in the front row. In a 5-1, you might have a setter in the front row. So notice how the opposite starts the game opposite the setter, and that has to be true throughout the entire game. Notice how the opposite has two players ahead of them in the rotation, and then the setter, and also two players behind them in the rotation, and then the setter. This means that the opposite is in the opposite position of the setter in the rotation. The outside hitters are opposite of each other. We also have our middle blocker and the libero, or the other middle blocker position, are opposite of each other in the lineup. So in a typical starting lineup, players are in rotation, but probably out of position. So on the first transition from offense to defense, players will switch to the correct position. By yelling switch, yell and run at the same time and be as fast as you can to get to your base defense position. As soon as the setter hits the ball, players shout switch. The outside hitter goes from the right side of the court to the left side. The opposite goes from the left side of the court to the right side. The libero gets into position. The outside hitter in the back row gets into their base defense position. Now all the players are in the correct base position, and from base, they will transition between defense and offense. After the point, each player must go back to their correct place in the lineup. For serve reception, when we receive, players will switch after we send the ball over the net. We got to get into serve receive. Notice the W formation between the 5 players that are going to pass. The setter hides behind the outside hitter in the front row. As the ball comes over, the passers will call the ball, me, 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 me. They will pass the ball to the setter, and the team moves into base offense positions. The setter will set the attacker, and the attacker will send the ball over the net. After that, since the players are out of position, they will switch and go to their base defense positions. Run, go fast, say switch and run. After the point, each player must go back to their correct place in the lineup and then rotate. In this case, note how a new outside hitter rotates to the front row as the old outside hitter rotates to the back row. They're still outside hitters, but their responsibility changed because they went from the front row to the back row or the back row to the front row. When in the front row, the outside hitter focuses on passing, attacking, and blocking. When in the back row, the outside hitter focuses on passing, covering, and digging. Now, the outside hitter is going to serve. The setter may take their base defense position as the server is not considered on the court. The setter, libero, the outside hitter in the front row, and the middle blocker are already in their base position. The only player out of position in this case is the opposite and the outside hitter in the back row. The opposite must stay in rotation between the outside hitter and the middle blocker until the ball is served. Once the ball is served, the opposite yells switch, and the opposite moves to their base defense position, and the outside hitter in the back row moves to their base defense position. After the point, each player must go back to their correct place in the lineup. When we receive in this rotation, players will switch after we send the ball over the net. We must get into serve receive. Again, we've got our W formation, but in this case, the setter, being in middle back, hides behind the opposite in the front row. As the ball comes over, one of the 5 passers or multiple of the 5 passers will try to play the ball. They call the ball, me, 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 and they pass the ball to the setter. All players get into their offense positions. At that point, the setter delivers the ball to an attacker, and the attacker hits the ball over the net. Once the ball goes over the net, the players out of position yell switch, and they get to their base defense positions. After the point, each player must go back to their correct place in the lineup and then rotate. Note how the libero moves to the front row. By rule, the libero cannot play the front row. Since the front row is missing a middle blocker, we sub one into the game, MB2. In some cases, the libero may serve during this rotation. In other cases, the middle blocker in the serving position will serve. When we serve, the middle blocker in the front row, MB2, and the opposite get into base defense. The outside hitter in the back row and the setter will switch to their base defense on the serve. The middle blocker in the back row will go to base defense in the libero position. After the point, each player must go back to their correct place in the lineup. The libero will enter the game for the middle blocker in the back row, if they haven't already. When we receive, players will switch after we send the ball over the net. Get into serve receive. Notice the W. In this rotation, the setter hides behind the middle blocker in the front row, MB2. We're going to pass the ball to the setter. The setter will set the attacker, and the attacker will attack the ball over the net, after which all players yell switch and go to their base defense positions. After the point, each player must go back to their correct place in the lineup and then rotate. In this case, the setter has moved into the front row and the opposite has moved into the back row. In a 5-1, the setter will remain in the game and run the offense from the front row. In a 6-2, a new setter will be subbed into the game for the opposite and play across the back row. Also, a new opposite will be subbed into the game for the setter to play front row. In a 6-2, the positions start over at this point. The difference is that the players that started the game in the front row are now in the back row, and the players that started the game in the back row are now in the front row. Across the front, we have an opposite, a middle blocker, and an outside hitter. Across the back, we have an outside hitter, a libero, and a setter. Thank you for taking the time to learn about the different positions in volleyball. Remember, move, work hard, and have fun.